Right. So, good evening and good morning. So wonderful to be back here again, meeting you all across our fibre optics of light, which is always such a nice way to meet. We are literally in our light bodies, so that we can make them bodies of virtue. So, I'm the spiritual program coordinator of Lungery Tangpa Centre in Brisbane. My name's Miffi, and I'm so happy to have been asked to lead this course for Shanti Davis Centre in New York City. And I was hoping you liked the title, Helpful Habits, Body, Speech and Mind in the Real World. It's a little bit of a tongue in cheek, isn't it? Because there is no real world from the Buddhist point of view, and yet we feel there is. And there lies the rub, isn't it? That's where all the difficulties come about, this discrepancy between reality and feelings. So I wanted to get straight to the point there and dive right in. So this short course it's based on Buddhist psychology, in particular on the what's generally called the 10 non-virtuous actions, and then the 10 positive actions, what to do in their stead. That's a pretty dry sounding topic. What it actually means is that we're going to have a look at habits, how our habits function. Pretty much, most of us will have some destructive habit patterns that dominate us, and so we don't have to lose hope. We can really do something about that, and then how to put in place helpful habit patterns so that behavior that brings happiness is what becomes our automatic response. So that'll be mostly what we'll look at today, how habit patterns function and how to dismantle the negative ones. And then for the next 3 weeks, we're going to spend one class on the body. So recognizing destructive actions and dismantling them so that we can take control of our behavior and fill the void, fill the vacuum with positive actions and activities. We'll have a look at speech, how we communicate, how to have kind and effective communication, and also how to shut up that inner dialogue that keeps on going in our mind that can often drive us to distraction. How to replace that inner dialogue with a positive one, with encouragement and with wisdom. How to listen to that with compassion. And then, of course, the mind. So simple techniques to cultivate positive mental states. And we'll probably go in a different order from that, because the traditional presentation can also be a bit dry. I think what we'll probably do is dive right into the mind first, because that is the beginning of everything, and then it'll get easier as we go on. So as we go through, I'm going to also reference some just things from pop science, pop culture, my amateur knowledge of neuroscience, and findings from neuroscience that I find really fascinating, because so much of this supports the Buddhist psychology. And I find having an approach that takes both sides, our Western society that it's so ingrained in us, we don't even know that it's just a Western thing, and then the Buddhist wisdom, what the Buddha discovered and how he actually achieved liberation from all of the emotions, the habit patterns. It's going to be about 2 hours each class, and a little short break in the middle somewhere so that we can have a stretch, go to the loo, kind of let our thoughts settle and let some questions arise, because I'm going to rely on questions from you. The more curly the question, the better, actually, especially in something like this. And as we go through each section, I'll also pause so you can ask questions as we go along as well. At the end of the class, I've got some reflection sheets. Sally, remind me to post the link when we get to it, so that it's just a one-page reflection sheet to keep you going throughout the week, keep the kind of the inner conversation going. Otherwise, don't be like me where everything kind of makes sense when you hear it and then 5 minutes later can't remember anything. So uh, by having the reflection sheets, it really helps to kind of integrate. All right. So where was my little clock? Hmm. To get started, I thought we should just do a short reflection, and I actually got this wonderful graphic for the course from a Tibetan Australian painter, Kama Punsog. And this is the street where I grew up in Melbourne. And he's painted these lovely Tibetan ladies and these beautiful dhakas and dakinis and Buddhas. And it really is like, it's such a nice depiction of, we think there is one reality, but actually there's so many layers, and so much of it depends on what we're focusing on, where our attention is drawn, and that changes our reality. So this is kind of my background to it. For us to get started today, I have a couple of questions for you. We'll do in our meditation. And it's to do with, well, why are we here in this course? So let's just focus our attention, and starting off by settling your posture. And from the inside outwards. So imagine that there is a fine thread of light that runs from the base of your spine up through your body and then comes out the crown of your head, and feel as if you're being gently supported or pulled upwards from your crown. So especially if you've had a long day already, feel all the weight of your body naturally supported from your crown. Your posture will naturally align as well. Your spine becoming a little straighter, becoming more symmetrical, more alert, but feeling comfortable. And once your posture is alert but comfortable, then in particular, let your shoulders drop. Let go of all that tension from the neck and the shoulders. Just feel it rolling off the tips of the shoulders. Bring your focus just to the gentle rising and falling of the breath, and just become aware. How do you feel at this moment? Without judging in any way. Just recognizing, is it a pleasant feeling tone? Is it a little agitated or restless? If nothing's happening, do you feel a bit bored? Notice any sensations in the body. So without judging them as good or bad, just noticing and naming, becoming aware of that inner environment, as if you were a weather reporter. Without any judgment of good weather or bad weather, just being able to recognize what kind of internal weather there is right now at this moment. And if a storyline does eventuate, then let it go. And As you've become aware of this internal environment and let all the thoughts and feelings just settle, just be, become aware of that stable spaciousness of your mind in which everything arises and falls away. And as the mind begins to feel more spacious and stable, then I'd like you to ask yourself 2 questions. So the first question, what are you doing at the moment that you want to stop? In your life in general at the moment, what kind of activities, ways of communicating, ways of attitudes, thinking, feeling, what are some of the things that you've recognized are unhelpful or unskillful and you want to stop them? And let them become apparent to your mind with the confidence that we'll be able to do something about them. And the second question, what are you not doing at present that you would like to be doing? So what kind of activities would you like to be involved in that you're not yet? Your Dharma aspirations, ways that you'd like to communicate with others, how you'd like to benefit those around you and ultimately benefit the world. And then take a moment to enjoy a little bit of imagination. What if you were able to stop those negative things and you were able to devote your time and your effort and energy to doing the things that matter the most to you? Imagine how your life would be different. How would it benefit you? And how in turn would you affect others, those around you? What kind of benefit would you be able to bring to them? How would it change? How would your life change? And so thinking of those wonderful ways that we'd be able to really help ourselves and others, when we can extend our motivation to think that's just what we conceive of at the moment. But why put a limit to it? We can actually set our motivation that we can, by doing this course, begin to completely eradicate all of our problems and their causes. And that we can start putting in place right now all of those positive behaviors that bring us energy and result in happiness for ourselves and others. Not just ordinary happiness, but a deep inner happiness, not circumstantial, not reliant on other things, but a lasting happiness, all the way to the peace and happiness of liberation and enlightenment for ourselves and everybody else. So as big a thought and aspiration as you can muster. And with this kind of impetus, then you can gently bring your focus back to the room. And hopefully as we go through the class, you'll be able to remember these things and start really relating the material that we cover today to your individual life, but also with this really vast aspiration without putting any limits on what we're hoping to achieve here. So today's main topic, how to break destructive habits, because we're looking at helpful habits, aren't we? And actually, uh, what's hindering us is being dominated by this momentum of destructive habit patterns. And I've always had this question, why is it that bad habits are so hard to break? And why is it that positive habits, ones that benefit ourselves and others, take so much effort to develop, so difficult to develop? And so there is a reason for this, and we can actually work on this one. What we're going to have a look at is the neurology of a habit pattern. So from a neuroscience point of view, how habit patterns work, but also then how to stop feeding the monster, as it's called. So to deconstruct our negative habit patterns, it's not a matter of force. It's not just willpower, because what if we run out of energy and we lose our willpower? Then everything comes flooding back in again. So willpower and force, it's one thing, but it's just one aspect of a whole range of things that we can do. So our aim is to be able to completely deconstruct our negative habit patterns. So instead of just forcing them down or suppressing them, which can work in the short term and sometimes is really necessary, but it's not a long-term strategy. When we have some relative leisure like this, then we can start work on actually dismantling them, dismantling the whole negative cycle. And if we do that, then naturally they won't come back. And naturally, even if we're low in energy, even if we have really difficult circumstances around us, we will naturally respond in a positive way. So that's the aim that we want to have. And that means we have to unpick them, dismantle them so that the causes are gone. The really good thing about this is there's somewhere that we can start. There's an easy place that all of us can start. Might be different places, but there's an easy place to get started on. So to put this into perspective, we've got to have confidence that it's possible. And so that's why I wanted to dive right into the nature of the mind right now, because if we don't have this confident feeling that it's possible, we're going to be hampered from the beginning. And with Buddhist psychology, the fundamental principle is that the nature of our mind, our nature, is naturally pure. So what does that mean? Naturally good, naturally pure. It means that, probably from an experiential point of view, on a good day, when you're well rested, nothing terrible is going on, the environment's nice and peaceful, if something happens, just from a neutral state, you will automatically respond well. And the whole reason that we don't respond well is because we're stressed. And cyclic existence, or samsara, is a traumatic, stressful environment outside of us and also within our own mind. So all the time we're operating under stress, under the dominance of our disturbing emotions, under our environment that's out of our control. So we very rarely have a good day where everything's all nice and relaxed and we can just naturally respond well. But I actually found the proof for this, of how by nature we are actually naturally good, pure human beings. And it was because a few years ago, before I was the spiritual program coordinator of Lungery Tumpa Centre, I worked in some call centres. So I was one of those people that called you up at dinner time and asked you really stupid questions about politics or something, and just like, how annoying is that? So when I first got the job, I was terrified. I was terrified of rejection. And I just thought, oh no, I'm just going to be miserable the entire time. I just succumbed to it. Um, so what I did was I would set my motivation to try and be uh, to bring some happiness to whoever I was on a call with, that at the end of the call, they were happier than at the beginning of the call. That was my benchmark, right? And so I do all sorts of things to remind me, oh yeah, another fellow human being, another person with potential, all of these things. So I tried to show some respect. And then I'd make the call. And the amazing thing happened that the majority of people that I spoke to automatically tried to help me, automatically tried to answer the stupid questions about politics or cat food or their holidays. And they'd really you could hear the bemusement. Why is she asking me this? What a stupid question. But hey, I'll try and help anyway. So people just on a neutral level spontaneously try and help. And it happened over and over and over again. I'd say 80–90% of the calls, everybody tried to help me. Didn't matter what dumb topic it was. And the few times when it went wrong, it was either I could hear an argument in the background, or uh, one time I rang and they said, "Don't you know we're having a funeral at the moment?" Like, oh, no, I didn't know. Very sorry. My condolences. See you later. But it was really clear that it was because they were stressed. It just gave me so much confidence about human nature. And from a Buddhist point of view, this is the nature of all living beings. We have a natural positive potential, but it's there kind of latent and unformed and very um, influenceable by all the stresses of life. So from a Buddhist point of view, what we have is this understanding that our mind is naturally pure. What happens? We're just pumping in clouds of toxic gases, toxic emotions, toxic responses, mistaken points of view, and it just clouds our judgment. And then on top of that, things are out of our control. We don't necessarily respond in the way that we first wished we would, and so we can't see clearly. But all of this inner toxicity, it's not us. If we're going to ask who are we are the naturally clear, luminous sky. But if we have a problem or a disturbing emotion or an obsession, it comes and it dominates us, doesn't it? And we think we are our disturbing emotions. We think we are all of those toxic mind states, but we're not. We're just polluted by them. If we act badly, we start making judgments on ourselves and we think, oh, I've done a terrible thing. I am a terrible person. It's like the sky is never terrible. It has toxic things in it that are terrible, but the sky is never terrible. You can't be a terrible person. You've just done a terrible thing. But how we feel, that's not necessarily correct. It's not in line with reality. So we, number one, got to stop pumping in more pollution. At least stop the pollution. And that was one of the things. Remember when COVID first happened and a whole lot of industries and everything shut down, and the waterways in Venice became clear and they could see dolphins, and the sky became clear over various countries for the first time in ages. And it was such a revelation. It's possible just in a few short days to change the entire atmosphere of the planet. So we can do the same with our mind. Number one, stop pumping more in. It's no good working on our mind while still pumping in the disturbances. And then we can recognize that the Buddha actually found a way how to stop pumping in more toxins and how to completely remove all of that inner pollution. Luckily for us, the Buddha shared his wisdom and knowledge, and because the nature of our mind is exactly the same as the nature of the Buddha's mind, we can do it too. So this is logic. You don't even have to believe this or feel it. We can just understand it, and it'll slowly come and become an insight. So the nature of our mind is the same as the nature of the Buddha's mind. And therefore, we also have this potential, the same potential as the Buddha. So just a couple of things. What happens though, what, where our biggest uh, trip up is that we conflate people with behavior. So we put the two together, we experience the two together. So if a person does a bad thing, we think they're a bad person. So here's what's his name from um, The Simpsons, Monty Burns. You know, he's evil, right? It's really hard to look at him and think, oh, a potential Buddha. But why? Because we've conflated all of his disturbing emotions and his nefarious activities with him. We've put the two together, and that's a mistake. So what we've got to start doing is start thinking, oh, they're overwhelmed by their afflictive emotions, overwhelmed by their greed, by their egotism. But inside there is a potential Buddha. And even if you can't get to that, you can think, well, inside there, Monty Burns at some stage was a cute little kiddie, scared and frightened and probably not loved enough. Somewhere in there, there's a vulnerable, wonderful person who's just completely stuck. So here's a few things that if you've been to teachings with Venerable Robina, often people will say, you know, I've got a brother he's an alcoholic, and you know, there's what do I do? He's just ruined all the relationships with everyone. And what Venerable Robina will say is, no, he's my brother, my wonderful dear brother who suffers from alcoholism. It's really different, isn't it? So one, you're going, they are an alcoholic, and then they're stuck forever in that, and we're identifying them as their problem. But what about my beautiful brother who suffers, is completely dominated by alcoholism? There's another one, Miriam Margolyes. I just heard her say on one of the TV shows that she was doing, but you don't say, oh, you're fat. You'd say you have obesity, because you are not fat. You are a potential Buddha with pristine, pure mind, but you have obesity. It's a whole different way of framing things. Verbally, we'll say things like, oh, you know, they're a nag, or they're, you know, mean with their speech. But actually, what about she's my dear friend who can't control her speech, which is a gossip. He's a gossip. He's my dear friend who can't control his speech. So again, just reframing it and recognizing how this purity of the mind plays out means that within there is this seed of liberation. Mentally, we might think, oh, I've got an angry neighbor. You know, they are angry. But what about he's old and filled with rage, with regret? Now, how can you be angry with someone like that? Because you see the tragedy, the human tragedy right there. So instead of feeling guilty about our negative behaviors, instead of feeling demoralized, this is a new way to recognize it, and to remember we are not our afflictions. So far, how are we going? What questions do you have? Are there any questions? Let me get the gallery up. Yeah, Wiley, go for it.
Every once in a while, I wonder, when you're thinking about someone else and wanting to realize they're under afflictive emotions, what stops that from being like pitying, instead of compassion, the pitying? Is it the recognition that we all do that, and we're
Yeah.
all,
Yeah, so pity, I think, is a way of protecting our own emotions, because pity separates ourselves from others. In pity, we're going, oh yeah, I'm sorry for them, but I'm not like that. And we do that, it's like a reflexive thing to protect ourselves so we don't feel pain. Because if we actually recognize the more destructive the person, the more of a tragedy it is. And that's really that's compassion's a hurtful feeling. Or empathy. Empathy is a hurtful feeling. And if we can't turn it into compassion, if we can't turn it into something to do about it, to generate compassion, and we just stay with the empathy, which is, oh no, the poor person, we'll just feel as bad as they do. So when we have that recognition, oh no, they're really suffering, and I know what that's like because I've really suffered like
Mhm.
that too. So we have that feeling of closeness, but it hurts. Empathy hurts. So from Buddhist psychology turns empathy into compassion, which is an activity, which is this thought, I must do something to help them. And so once we've turned it into an activity, I wish you were free of suffering. I wish there was something to do. I'm going to do whatever I can right now and work towards being able to do more as I develop. Then we've got our agency back again. Now we've got a little bit of control. We're doing something. So it goes from being stuck in empathy to being able to do something about it. And it's really different, as you probably realize, from pity, which is a bit rude, actually. So
Thank you.
great question, Riley. Wiley, really good.
Thank you.
Anybody else doing okay? Okay, so let's have a look then at what a habit is. Screen share, here we are. So actually, what is a habit? Generally, habits in general are an acquired behavior done repeatedly that becomes involuntary. So anything that we do a few times, depending what type of thing it is, will become automatic, and then we will find ourselves doing it without noticing. We can see habits working very strongly in animals. So, I've got a couple of cats, and if they just need to get frightened of one thing, and forever after, every time they see it, they have an involuntary reaction. So it just takes one go. One of the cats isn't so smart and he's much more relaxed. And so it took a few goes for him to be frightened of the thing. Um, so this can work on a positive side as well, but it takes a lot more effort. Just like the first few pedals of a bicycle take a lot more effort to get going. And then once we've got momentum, it's easy. So positive habits too can become an acquired behavior done repeatedly, and then it becomes a natural response, involuntary, it becomes automatic. So a negative habit is a lot more than just something that's obviously destructive, because a negative habit has this second thing that it does, which it also takes us away from something beneficial. So we have the obvious destructive habits, like I was addicted to cigarette smoking for years and years, and I was addicted to alcohol for years and years. So both of those things just were destructive, if not immediately in the short term, definitely in the long term, and it's obvious. Uh, but there are other things, negative habits, where we just waste our time. And so it takes us away from doing the things that really matter to us. And then something happens, we lose our health or we lose our job, and suddenly all the things on our bucket list that we wanted to do are not possible anymore. And so a negative habit can be much more insidious. It really takes us away from our potential. It also means that the whole incident that initially triggered it may have well finished, but we keep having a traumatic response that's completely out of date. The incident only happened once or twice in our life, even if it was really terrible, but it's created this very powerful response in us that we respond to everything like that. And the more we do that, the stronger it becomes, the more ingrained. And so it's this kind of domino effect. So from Geshe Sopa has just a really simple way of putting what habits are. Becoming accustomed means that by repeating certain behaviours over a long time without applying any antidote, you become habituated to those actions and they become your natural, ordinary, and daily way of life. For example, there are people who get angry all the time without much provocation. As soon as some little thing does not go their way, they get furious. They've become so accustomed to having this emotion of anger arise, and it's become so natural to them, they don't even think of trying to stop it. And I'd add, they don't even realize it's not them. So there is this spark of hope in there to recognize, aha, doesn't matter what negative habit we have, it's not us. There's something we can do about it. So, then we can think, okay, what are we doing right now that isn't so obviously destructive, but that we'd like to stop, that we know is taking us away, and from the things that actually matter to us. So one of the things that I noticed for me was, just social media. There's there's an infinite amount of interesting things you can find. There's an infinite amount of just muck and toxicity that you can find. And so I would plow through all of the stuff that was interesting, and that whole bottomless bowl effect, like there was just more and more, and I had fear of missing out and all of these things. And I started realizing the ratio here of how many hours each day on social media to how much benefit I was getting. The ratio did not match. So it's not inherently a good or a bad thing. It's what we make of it. But I couldn't make something good of it. So thank goodness I was able to throw myself off the socials. Now I've got this quote here, which is some of you might have seen, and it's really profound. And so I put it through Snopes to find out where it comes from, because often it's ascribed to the Buddha, but it doesn't come from the Buddha, and it doesn't come from Lao Tse or Confucius or anyone like that. It actually comes from some supermarket mogul. He's in America. I can't remember his name, sorry. Uh, but hey, we take our wisdom where we find it. So this is the quote. Watch your thoughts, for they become words. Watch your words, for they become your actions. Watch your actions, for they become habits. Watch your habits, for they become character. Watch your character, for it becomes your destiny. I mean, this is great, isn't it? It goes from how how we frame the world. First off, our thoughts, all of our emotions and our mistaken states of mind and confusions or whatever. And then we start believing that story. We start bringing it in, making it our reality with our words. Then naturally we start acting in that way. So if we're describing our best friend who suffers from alcoholism as an alcoholic, then we start treating them as that and nothing more. And then, or we start reacting to the world, being reactive, retaliating. And then very quickly, retaliation becomes a habit. It becomes natural. Someone's angry at me, and I say the angry thing back without even thinking about it. Someone shoves me in a crowd, and I shove back without even thinking about it. And so then, before we know it, that's become us, our character. And now people think of us as an angry person. And we go, but no, somewhere in there I must be good. But it's become our character. It's become really ingrained and very difficult to move. And that then gives us the probability of it getting stronger. Unless we do something about it, it becomes our destiny. And so then, we don't want to end up as grumpy old men or grumpy old women. But if we don't do anything about it, that's exactly what's going to happen. Every step along the way, we can do something about it. We can change our destiny for sure. But we have to actually do something. Can't just hope for the best. Is pity. I'd like it to be that way, but okay, so this is a little something from Lamy, from the peaceful stillness of the silent mind. So he says through meditation or just reflecting like we are, you can discover how even actions of body and speech are psychologically motivated. And this discovery leads you to a natural control of all your actions. An understanding of your psychological impulses is all you need to become your own psychologist. You don't need to run to others like a baby asking, am I okay? Do you think I'm okay? It's babyish to always be asking somebody else if you're okay. It makes your whole life baby-like and you always feel insecure. Having to rely on somebody else to tell you you're okay only makes your life more difficult. And anyway, half the time, you're not going to believe what the other person says. So why bother? It all becomes a ridiculous joke. So you should investigate every aspect of your own life. Your life will become more integrated and you will see things more clearly. A partial view of life is what makes you insecure. There are many types of psychological impulse driving you to do what you do. Some of these are positive, others are negative. And instead of simply doing whatever your impulses dictate, it's better to step back and ask why and how. Observing your mind is much more interesting than watching TV. Once you've seen your mind, you'll find television boring. Checking in detail what you've been doing from the time when you were born, not so much your physical actions, but the psychological impulses driving you to do them. It's extremely interesting and is how to become familiar with the way your internal world functions. Analyzing your own mind with your own knowledge wisdom makes you mentally healthy. It's how you discover that your enjoyment does not depend on chocolate. You can be happy and satisfied without chocolate. uh, Normally you believe, as long as I have chocolate, I'll be happy. I can't be happy without it. You make your own philosophy of life with this kind of determination, which comes from attachment. And then when the chocolate disappears, you get nervous. Oh no, now I'll never be happy. But it's not the absence of chocolate that's making you unhappy. It's your fixed ideas. It's the way your mind tricks you into believing that your happiness depends on external objects. It's our psychological impulses that make us mentally ill. So just before we dive into the neurology of a habit cycle, there's something else to set the scene, which is to look at happiness. So we have these inner toxicity, the disturbing emotions, they're pumping into this beautiful, pure nature of our mind, the sky all the time. Okay, fair enough. Maybe we can purify the sky, the clouds will part. But what is it that we're actually hankering for? We all have this wish to be happy. But like Lamieshi was saying, most of the time, because our senses are drawn outwards, we think our happiness comes from out there as well, just because that's where our attention is. And it's always drawn that way. But actually, where does our happiness come from? Because even if we have chocolate, if we're miserable and just had a fight with someone, it's not going to taste any good. So our happiness actually comes from within. It's got to come from within. If it comes from outside, it'll never be enough. So happiness actually isn't a thing that happens to us from outside, like circumstances changing it, we get something. Happiness is also a habit. It's a habit of mind. So it's an inner activity and it's something that we can practice. So if we practice certain things, the result is we're content, peaceful, calm, and happy. So what we need to do is train in those certain things, and then being happy will naturally become easier. And not only that, it'll be naturally easier to develop our virtues, our good qualities, our character. It'll become more likely that we develop those good qualities. We'll be less reactive, less emphasis on the negative characteristics. And just like in that wonderful quote, that is what becomes our destiny. So what that means is we develop this baseline of what I call realistic optimism. So we still know what our limitations are on the day to day, but we have this deep optimism that is the big picture of complete liberation from cyclic existence and enlightenment, awakening, developing all of our good qualities. So just for today, some habits that we can develop for happiness. So one for the mind, one for the speech, and one for the body. So the one for the mind is a gratitude journal. I'll go through these just in a moment. The one for the body, pay it forward, and the one for speech, giving compliments. So the gratitude journal, that'll be in your reflection sheet notes there. And so it's a way of not just looking at the good things that happen to you, because that kind of focuses us a lot on getting stuff from outside. The good things that happen to us, it can focus us on the kindness of others, which is very elevating. It really makes us um, feel confident in the world. So that's one of the things. But also part of a gratitude journal or happiness journal is to recognize your good qualities, recognize what you bring to the world. So that's there in the notes. And it's a way of refocusing your mind, because most of the time we're just drawn to the negativities automatically. And so we think, oh, nothing's going wrong in our life. But actually, if we looked, there is so much going right that it's miraculous. In fact, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, he'd say about our precious human life, he'd say, it seems impossible, and yet it happened. So gratitude journal will help us do that. Pay it forward. Well, there's that whole wonderful movie, isn't there? Pay it forward. It's so inspiring. So that's every time, it's just a great habit to have. Every time someone does something good to you or for you, you determine you will pay it forward to somebody else. Even someone you don't like, pay it forward to them. So just make it an even Stevens. And that in itself, it just sets up really easy, positive momentum. And so it's a physical thing, just giving food or a meal or good things to the op shop, or all the myriad ways that we can physically help people, help them carry heavy things, lift things from a tall shelf, all of that stuff. Give them a lift, a lift home. Uh, Help them find somewhere safe to live. And the one with speech, give the compliments. Now, this one, it's a tricky one for me because I'll have it in my mind, but I never get to say it. You need the presence of mind to do it. And so it takes a bit of awareness, but it is so worth doing. And to give a compliment, I've heard the best way to do it is you say, oh, you look nice today because you say what's nice. So it's not just a flippant thing, or gee, you handled that really well. I'm I'm so impressed with your patience. It was fantastic. And so what you're helping to do, instead of just making people proud, oh, you look great tonight, um, you're drawing their attention to their good qualities. And that's a real gift. So compliments that actually compliment people's good characteristics, their efforts, their good-heartedness. You tried really, I saw how hard you tried there. Even if it didn't work out, doesn't matter. Wow, what great intentions. I'm so impressed. And that helps. So 3 really simple things, body, speech, and mind. How are we going? Any questions? Comments? Ah, Sunny, yeah.
So, yeah, I have a question. So, like, in terms of developing the good habits, and that that quotation is really good. In your thoughts, and then it all ends up in character and destiny. It all ends up in destiny. By the way, who wrote that? You said that. You said
It was a supermarket mogul. It was someone who started supermarkets in the 30s. If
okay,
you put
great.
it in, I can't remember the name, but if you put it into Snopes, the checking the quotes thing, it'll tell you all about it. And at
Thank
first I
you.
went, oh no, now I can't use the quote. But then I thought, oh no, this is great because like even a supermarket mogul has some wisdom to share.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. In terms of thoughts, like, do you have any tips on how to observe your thoughts more carefully so that you can change them? Because so often, it's just like something happens, but I can't trace back. I can't identify the thought that
Yeah,
was behind it. It's just the
I
sense
know
of,
it happens so fast and we're so quickly overwhelmed that we don't even know that it's happening. So yeah, you're absolutely right. So next week we're going to delve right into the mind, into thoughts, feelings, attitudes, because that's actually the genesis of it all. But what we can have a look at now is this neurology of a habit cycle. So you'll see there's some part in the cycle where you become aware of what's happening, but then you can trace it back. And that's what's so helpful about recognizing this cycle. So let's have a look at that now then. The neurology of the habit cycle. So I thought if we go through the negative one, which is feeding the monster, and then we'll have a little break and then we can go through how to deconstruct it. So we're going to go through the negative and then we will see how we can undo each one. So this is normally what happens. And a lot of this information comes from a book by Jeffrey Schwartz called You Are Not Your Brain. So he's a neuroscience scientist. But I've added in some bits that include the Buddhist psychology that he didn't necessarily delineate so specifically. But basically what we have to start with is the input. So what comes in from our sensual world, the sights, the sounds. If there's renovations happening next door, all of those sounds will have an effect on us. If there's beautiful, peaceful, tweeting birds, that'll have an effect on us. So all the sense data. But also there's the inner um, input, our memories, various emotions. You have the smell of popcorn and it triggers all these memories. It might be positive ones, it might be really detrimental ones, depending on what our associations are. And we have very little control over all of this, and it's a huge barrage of stuff that comes in all the time. Then what happens is that we have an experience of attraction or aversion. We like it or we don't like it. We experience it as pleasant or unpleasant. But this is a deceptive brain message. So something that we like may not be good for us. Something that we dislike may actually be very helpful. That's why it's deceptive. So we have the initial experience of pleasant, unpleasant. We like it, don't like it. And the problem comes in here. We believe it. So, for instance, if you get a toothache, we don't like it. It's painful. And so what do we try and do? We try and get rid of the toothache. We try and relieve the discomfort. We take painkillers. We push it away because it's a horrible feeling, don't like it, it's no good, push it away. So the deceptive brain message is that, hey, there's a reason for the pain of a toothache. Something's gone wrong. We have an infection. How do we know we have an infection? Because we have pain. The pain is our friend. It's telling us something's gone wrong. But if you've ever struggled through toothache and just taken painkillers, so you go for one day, you're thinking, oh yeah, you can handle it. Go for another day, take 10 more painkillers, and then the third day, you peaks out here, it's incredibly painful, and you're like, oh no, now I have to really do something about this. So the deceptive brain message, we conflate feels bad is bad. And that's wrong. Pain feels bad, it's good. It tells us something's wrong and we have to do something about it now. There's a couple of other amazing deceptive brain messages. One that I really just blew my mind was that every time that you crave sugar, if you have a sweet tooth, if you're just craving something sweet, what your body actually needs is protein. So it's a deceptive brain message. And when we want something sweet, we're convinced what we want is something sweet. But actually, what you need is protein. So we have this uncomfortable feeling. We have this urge to remove it. So there's those physical feelings. That's fairly obvious to identify. If you've ever had a blister, again, it's something unpleasant. We try and push it away. We ignore it. And then the more you ignore it, the longer it's going to take to heal. So again, the pain is our friend. But the deceptive pain message goes, feels bad is bad. And that's where we get stuck. Emotionally, when we have a distressing feeling arise, a similar thing happens. We try and push it away. Even in meditation, you have a distressing thought or feeling or memory arise, we try and push it away. We have negative emotion, anger or revenge arise, and we go, oh, that's no good, and we try and push it away. We have depression or anxiety arise, and we go, I don't like it, and we try and push it away. There's this uncontrollable urge to relieve the discomfort. And that actually harms us because, number one, by trying to push away that feeling, trying to push away the feeling of pain can often make it worse. Trying to push away depression or push away aversion just makes us more aware of the problem. So we're going, no, 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 no. And it's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. We're not relaxing. So we push it away, or we want the sugar and we crave it. And so we have this urge to relieve the discomfort. And then we do the thing. We relieve the discomfort. We have the sweet. We push away the depression or the sad feeling. We push it away. And yeah, our distress is momentarily relieved. Just like having a cigarette, our stress is relieved for sure, but it's a short-term thing. And what it does is it strengthens this habitual unhealthy response. So the short-term response is strengthened. And so what happens then? Our deceptive brain message is reinforced. I want the sweet thing. I have the sweet thing. I feel better. Great. That's what I'm going to do. So it doesn't take very long for that to become completely automatic. Or we have the sad feeling. We have the drink. We feel happy and buoyant. We go, great, that's the solution to it. And so then the next time something triggers us, that input, we'll go, oh, here's that sad feeling again. It's no good because it feels bad. It is bad. Therefore, I'm going to get rid of it. I'll have a drink. Feel better now. And so it goes on tighter and tighter and faster. But the side effects start happening. Start having a toxic response to the alcohol, start fighting with others. The sadness doesn't go away. It gets bigger. And now suddenly our only way of coping we can't use anymore. And now we find ourselves in our 40s and we don't know how to deal with simple sadness. So here's a little bit from Lama Yeshe, from Becoming Your Own Therapist, putting it into Buddhist psychology, which is, pretty much identical. Buddhist psychology teaches that emotional attachment to the sense world results from physical and mental feelings. Your 5 senses provide information to your mind, producing various feelings, all of which can be classified into 3 groups: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And these feelings arise in response to either physical or mental stimuli. When we experience pleasant feelings, emotional attachment ensues. And when that pleasant feeling subsides, craving arises and the desire to experience it again. The nature of this mind is dissatisfaction. It disturbs our mental peace because its nature is agitation. When we experience unpleasant feelings, we automatically dislike and want to get rid of them. And then aversion arises, again disturbing our mental peace. And when we feel neutral, we ignore what's going on and don't want to see reality. Thus, whatever feelings arise in our daily lives, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, they disturb us emotionally, and there's no balance or equanimity in our mind. Furthermore, many of our negative actions are reactions to feeling. See for yourself. When you feel pleasant as a result of contact with people or other sense objects, analyze exactly how you feel, why you feel pleasant. The pleasant feeling is not in the external object, is it? The pleasant feeling's not in the chocolate cake. The pleasant feeling's not in the drink. It's in your mind. It's your mind that is experiencing it. I'm sure we can all agree that the pleasant feeling is not outside of you. So, why do you feel that way? If you experiment like this, you will discover that happiness and joy, discomfort and unhappiness, and neutral feelings are all within you. And you'll find that you yourself are mainly responsible for the feelings you experience. And once you realize the true evolution of your mental problems and processes, you'll never blame any other living being for how you feel. This realization is the beginning of good communication with and respect for others. So here's the cycle. And Sunny, what I was hoping was that, when we have a disturbing emotion arise, or when we realize that we've got into trouble, we might be down here somewhere in the automatic, habitual, unhealthy response. We might have found that someone said something snarky to us and we've said it snarky back again. We've just retaliated. Or we've become bored and we've just distracted ourselves. So the thing is to just take it back a step and go, okay, what am I actually feeling right now? Aversion, craving, frustration. We'll notice some form of agitated state of mind. And then we can wind it back even further and go, okay, there's this simple feeling of aversion or attraction, pleasure. But I've put a story in there as well. This thought, I'll never be happy unless ... And then we question, is that true? We can even wind it back further and go, actually, it's not them. It's not the input coming from outside. That's the trigger. But the whole reason why yesterday I was fine driving and today I'm filled with rage, road rage, it's not because the roads changed from one day to the next. It's my state of mind changed. So what's the input that's going on in my state of mind? So what questions do you have about this? The feeding the monster cycle. Does it make sense to you? Can you kind of see the trajectory. Yeah, Sheila.
So I have a question about these, what did you call them, acquired behaviors? If we keep going back, then does that like sort of go back to karmic tendencies and imprints that we bring with us?
Yeah, so that's the double whammy because actually like habit, that's karma. So karma, internal cause and effect. And normally when we talk about karma in the West, we're mostly focusing on the results of karma. Something's happened to us or something's gone wrong or whatever, and we go, oh, that's karma. But that's just the result. That's the end of the karma. But actually, karma is what's causing things, what causes are we putting in place, the whole process. And that's habits. So you can see here with this habit cycle, we've got our environmental karma, all of the triggers and the inputs. We've got our, what happens to us as well, what people do to us. That's a karmic result. We've got the karma in terms of our personality, how we habitually respond to things, how we see the world. It's also karma, it's habit. And then our natural way of responding, what we physically do and say, that too is habit or karma. And then this is the tragedy of karma if we don't understand it. Regardless of whether we know whether it's going on or not, whatever we do has consequences. Our diet has consequences. Whether we understand diet or not, it's going to affect us. Whether we believe in diet or not, it's still going to affect us. So that cycle, that's really what it is. Karma is habit and how we respond to things. And so often with karma, we think, oh, we've externalized it a bit, but actually the key to karma is this of understanding the habit cycle, because we can do something about each of those stages. And we already do. It's just that we don't have a coherent response. We already are dealing with each of these stages in some way. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be here. So we're already on the way, but it's just we've got to get more coherent. So let's just have a little few minutes break. If you need to stand up, we'll take like 3 minutes. Just because I promised that we'd have a break. And often if you stand up and walk around the room and change the perspective, a new little question might come into your mind. So I'll be back in Okay, so are we all back again? I think so. So, change of scenery, have a little stretch. Were there any questions or comments that came up because of that? Do we have anything at all? Yeah, Sunny.
I mean, you want to go? Go ahead. You have something,
Sorry?
Wally? No, Wiley had his hand up?
Oh, Wiley.
Yes, I just had a quick question that sometimes I get confused about just with the Western thinking. A lot of times when we're talking about the good, a positive and negative stuff, it's not so much as good as in good and bad as in like you're a terrible person, and it's just negative in that you're going to get suffering because of it. You know, is that true? Or because
Uh,
it's so easy to think, I guess what I'm equating it to is depending on what we're talking about, like good, like pure versus sin, you know, that kind of thing, you know, with negative emotions and
yes.
negative stuff.
I know it's tricky, so it's worth taking our time to unpick this. So one of the things is that we've got experiences that we have, and the basic feeling. So we recognize something's going on, and this is kind of where all the whole mindfulness meditations come in. This is the whole purpose, that we become familiar with just recognizing what's happening without just being 100% in it. And the most basic one of that is just to notice, okay, there's something happening, and then it becomes apparent whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And so far, there's no value judgment there. It's just a sensation. You think of it as a sensation. So for physical things, pleasant sensation or unpleasant sensation. But emotions too. Mostly emotions are just sensations. There's nothing deep or meaningful about them. They're emotional sensations, a pleasant one or an unpleasant one or a neutral one. So I found it really helpful to name them emotional sensations for a start. And so then pretty much immediately we'll label on top of that, if it's unpleasant, it's bad. Whereas, as we know with our pain system, we have a pain system. It is good. It's kept us alive. Here we are. If we didn't have a pain system, we wouldn't be here. So thank you, pain system. So it doesn't mean that it's pleasant. No, it doesn't, but it does mean that it is actually good. It's necessary or it's important. So I'm not gaslighting you and saying, oh, therefore it's great. It's still really challenging and difficult, but it's important. And so the same with, then we have an emotional sensation like sadness. Again, it's not pleasant, but it can be really useful and really important because it means that we develop empathy for others. You know, we start opening our heart to others. It's only if we've ever experienced grief or if we've ever had someone close to us die that we have the patience to feel for somebody else when they're grieving. And um, and if we haven't had that experience, we just get impatient with them and say, "I'll just you, you should be over that by now. Hurry up." So our own sadness really makes us a better person, but it doesn't mean that therefore the sadness is nice. So I'm glad you asked that because I've got tripped up with this quite often, where then I've gone to the other side and gone, oh, therefore, not just that it's good or useful or important. I've gone, oh, therefore it's nice. And that really is just being in denial about the fact that no, it's really difficult and horrible. So we're not kind of invalidating the feelings, but we're kind of slowing the whole process down so that we don't miss the benefit in them. So yeah, that's the first one. And then what happens, we have a feeling, say sadness, and because we don't like it and we haven't recognized the benefit in it, how it's useful to us or to others, then we just want to get rid of it. And so often the first that we don't even know we're sad, we just get angry. We just find that we're yelling at everybody, just like, get out of my face. And so then you may or may not then think, oh, I'm a bad person. You might think, oh, I'm justified and everyone's horrible and get out of my face. Or you might think, oh, no, I'm trying to be a good Buddhist, but I'm a failure. And either one is totally wrong. But because actually what's happening is that we're just being reactive to our sadness, to our lack of control, to, whatever terrible thing. And that's the number one thing that we can know, is that anybody who's angry is suffering. They're sad, or they're feeling betrayed, or they're feeling lost or intimidated, or all of those things. They're feeling terrible, and that's absolutely guaranteed. But they don't know that, and we often can't recognize it either. So many times an angry person will have no connection to that inner sadness at all. Because the whole cycle has gone so quickly and it's so entrenched, it just goes straight to retaliation. And it's very, very difficult to unpick that. And then it's, well, who knows if other people can do that, but we ourselves, it's difficult for us to unpick our responses to that as well. Yeah, I was thinking about this. So there are similarities from a Judeo-Christian culture, but there are some things that do not fit with Buddhism. And so this judgmental feeling that we often get, it runs away with us. That does not fit in Buddhism. And so, while if you ever have that judgmental feeling of therefore I'm bad, just recognize it as a mistake. And sometimes it's a really domineering feeling, and you just recognize it as that and just say, yeah, it's happening, but it's not true. It's a mistake. Great. Anybody else? Any other questions or comments? Well, let's have a look then at how to deconstruct the negative habit cycle. So we've already talked a little bit about it. So we've got the feeding the monster. Now let's change. Deconstructing it. So first off, with the input, normally we just try and change the input, don't we? We try and make everyone shut up, or make everybody act differently, or get rid of the things, or get the things, whatever it is. We try and change out there. But we can be proactive here, and instead of putting all of our efforts out there, put our efforts with our mind, our motivation. We'll have so much energy if we do this, because we won't be wasting our energy on trying to control the uncontrollable. What we can control is our mind. And we can, especially in the morning as we're waking up, if we direct our motivation, first thing, the whole rest of the day will go in that direction. It's really important to bring our focus and attention to that, because if we forget, if we just barrel out of bed, which I often do, and just kind of stumble into the day, the direction that we're going in will be our default motivation. So on a good day, our default motivation might be just neutral. But if we haven't brought any awareness to it, the moment something goes wrong, we'll just be reactive. And so what started off as a neutral thing actually becomes the perfect breeding ground for all of our negative emotions and negative responses to arise automatically. And so then we've just hampered ourselves from the get-go. So we set our motivation every morning. And one of the best ways that we can do this is we can think, today I'm going to do my utmost to be able to help others in whatever way. And even if I can't help others, no matter what, I'm not going to harm them. So that's the Mahayana way. The first off is the altruistic intention. I'm going to help. I'm trying to be of benefit to others today in whichever way I can. You're priming your mind. And then you're having this thought, but no matter what, I'm not going to harm them. I'm not going to retaliate. So just having that thought, that intention, then the whole rest of the day, you won't have to keep reminding yourself that you're already off in that direction. You can also ask yourself, a good way to set a motivation is to ask why 3 times. Why am I even getting out of bed? If it's just to pay the bills, honestly, it's not a good enough reason. Stay in bed. If it's because the house is dirty and you've got to clean it, that's not a good enough reason either. Stay in bed. You've got to have a good reason. So why, for instance, if the house is dirty, why even bother cleaning the house? There's no inherent, I mean, we've been taught this from ages ago. Cleanliness is next to godliness. Actually, there's nothing inherently good about being clean, but just recognizing how it affects us. Now then it gets interesting. So even that urge to clean the house, it's not about cleaning the house. It's about we need order and tidiness and cleanliness. And why do we need that? Because we don't experience that in our mind. So then you can think, oh, okay, I've got to get up because I've got to clean the house. Why? Because by cleaning my outer environment, I can start cleaning my inner environment. And just like I have this urge to get everything clean out there, that's actually an urge for cleanliness, for existential cleanliness. So that's why I'm going to clean the house. And as I clean the house, may I clean all the disturbing emotions from my mind. Whoa! And then you're going to go, go, go instead of like, oh no, I've got to do the vacuuming. I hate the vacuuming. So you keep asking why. And then you think, well, why do I even want to clean those disturbing emotions from my mind? Well, because I want to be happy and not suffer. I want to have a nice environment. But why? Because what I can do in that environment, because I have this amazing life, there's things that I can do to benefit others. And why do I want to benefit them? Well, because why? Because the potential is unlimited. So what's the biggest potential to go for? Liberation and enlightenment. So then you've gone from this urge to clean the house or a resentment of cleaning the house all the way to being enthused for your own liberation and the enlightenment of all living beings. And then off you go and you do the vacuuming and everyone's going to wonder, what's their secret? So motivation, number 1. And it's totally different from trying to change the input, just suppress the input, which is impossible. So right there, you'll liberate so much energy because you're working on what can be controlled. So then the next thing that happens, then when the feelings come, something that you like or something that you don't like, instead of reacting, pause, push the pause button. And this is what mindfulness is about. It's your window of opportunity before you're overwhelmed. So normally we focus on the content of the disturbing brain message. Oh, I want it. I don't want it. It's good or it's bad. I'm obsessed with the biscuit. Oh, what do you guys call them? Cookies. I want a cookie. I'm obsessed with the cookie. And now we're stuck in that brain message. Instead of just pausing and going, I'm noticing some dissatisfaction. Mindfulness is also interesting in that I notice that things are not quite right because I start getting clumsy. I start crashing into things. I've got all these bruises all on the side of my thighs from the hitting all the corners of the tables. So when I notice that's happening, that's like, oh, push the pause button, slow down. What's going on, Miffi? Be patient. Examine the feeling without judging it, without rushing to conclusions. So this is where you do the notice and name and you really slow things down. And it's the exact time when we automatically try and speed them up, where we just go, oh, I don't like it. And then we have the urge to relieve it. So the whole purpose of boring mindfulness meditation is to create this pause, this window from the sensation, the emotional or physical sensation, and before we react. And we might get half a second before we react, but our job is to make that space longer and longer. So then we have 1 second, and we have 2 seconds of space before we jump into the judgment, before we panic, as Venerable Robina so often says. So this one, it's being able to have the patience and the compassion to just sit with the feeling for a moment before we panic. Sit with the sadness, sit with the dissatisfaction, sit with the dread before we panic. So part of this too is where we can, with the notice and name, is just describe the physical sensations, describe the emotional sensations. And so you might actually be in pain and not know it. You might be thirsty and not know it. You might be tired and not know it. There might be some emotional thing going on that hasn't been in your awareness. You haven't given it any space. So right here, if we set our motivation, the likelihood of the day going really well is already, so much better. The odds are so much better. If we then have a bit of a pause with a mindfulness, and we get this practice where we don't ever just react in the moment. There's always a pause. There's no way things can go wrong. We've already stopped the whole habit cycle right there. And then even if bad things happen to us, we're not going to respond by making them worse. What an amazing vision. But often we miss that window. We forget the pause, and we find ourselves already trying to urge to relieve the discomfort. So this is where we need discipline. This is where we can acknowledge the feeling without engaging in it. And so neurologically, having the discipline to not relieve the discomfort, to not rush into reactivity, 15 minutes. So if you're there and you're going, I absolutely have to have the cookie. I can't live without the chocolate cake. In your mind, you can go, yes, Miffi, you can have it, but in 15 minutes. Or if you're trying to break the habit, cigarette smoking, yes, instead of no, you can't have a cigarette. And so then the image of a cigarette becomes bigger and bigger in your mind. You think, yeah, sure, you can have the cigarette, but in 15 minutes. So parents kind of know this, don't they? They'll say, yeah, just not yet. Soon. So we do need a little bit of discipline here. And this is where discipline is useful, not to push down the feeling, but just to be able to sit with the discomfort and stretch it out. And so this in itself isn't going to feel pleasant, because being stretched doesn't feel pleasant. It's slightly agitating. But the really good thing to remember here is that's just like with exercise. It's evidence that it's working. If it's difficult, it's evidence that it's working. Neurologically, that feeling of agitation or discomfort in your mind, I kind of feel it like that high pitched where I'm just going, ah. That whole time that you're feeling that tension is evidence of your brain rewiring. Fantastic. So again, it doesn't feel pleasant, but you can go, good. Just like if you've ever done weight training and your muscles hurt, you go, good. So 15 minutes rule of thumb, but they say neurologically, even just a few seconds counts. So if you can't do 15 minutes, it's all right. We'll be able to work up to that. But at the very least, when we have the urge to respond in whatever way, you feel it arise like a wave, and then do not respond until that wave subsides. Once that urgency to have the cookie or to say the thing has gone, then you can do whatever you decide to do. Don't do it in the heat of the moment. Then we can do it mindfully. We've got some control of what we're going to say. We can determine whether we have 10 cookies or just 2, all of that. But the most important thing, waiting until that urge has subsided, is that it doesn't wire our neurons together in the negative way. It stretches them out. Now, if we've missed that window of opportunity and we're about to do the thing, and we know we don't want to, we know we don't want the 10th chocolate cake piece, we know we don't want to say the retaliatory comment back again, then we distract ourselves, change the channel. So they say, you know, when you're giving up cigarette smoking, you have something else to do instead. So have a beautiful, crispy, fresh apple. Have a cool, sparkling glass of water. Something that is the sensation is different, and you have distracted yourself. But this is important here to recognize that this is often the first thing that we do, isn't it? We have the trigger and then we distract ourselves, and we miss these mindfulness and discipline steps. And that's why it doesn't stick. And parents, they just go straight to you know, distracting the kid. Here, look at this shiny thing, look at that shiny thing, which does work in the short term, but it's not supported by creating that window of space, that pause, and it's not supported by some internal discipline. So it's not a long-term solution. And it's a real shame that we go straight to distraction. And in fact, going straight to distraction and changing the channel, especially with social media, has become like our go-to thing, that we don't even know we have a problem because it's so easy to change the channel. So you use this one, changing the channel, doing something else instead. Once the negative habit cycle is up and running and you know it's about to run away from you, then the last ditch effort, you do something else instead. So what to do instead is 2 characteristics for this. It's got to be something that you enjoy doing, and it's got to be something beneficial. So when you change a channel, it's not a punishment. You're not going to go, oh, I've done a bad thing, I'm going to go and like make myself do something I hate doing, like, I don't know, spring clean or clean the driveway, or, you know, you're not punishing yourself. You're not wiring in things you don't like. You've got to do something you love doing. So whether it's crochet, whether it's reading, whether it's singing or dancing, whatever it is, something you love and that brings long-term benefit. So it can't be something I love, like drinking a bottle of champagne. It's got to be something I love that's going to actually bring some benefit. So it's not just in an indulgent thing, changing the channel, which often it is. We just go and, you know, shove in a meal and some alcohol and a movie and going out and more and more and more and more. And it, you know, that's not a healthy distraction. Something that's going to benefit us in the long term. So that's where really hobbies can come in, because hobbies often can have human interaction, or we're making something useful. They slow our reactivity down. So we've got to plan this ahead of time. So in the heat of the moment, you're about to fall off the wagon, and then you go, oh no, I'm not going to let rip. I'm not going to say those things. I'm going to take my crochet out and madly crochet for 5 minutes. That's my like guaranteed go-to. It's my guaranteed go-to when I'm stressed, when I'm anxious, when I'm depressed, when I'm overwhelmed with dread. I just pull out my crochet and I go, hold everything. I'm just going to crochet, and then it creates this little window of space. And then I can start thinking clearly, going, oh, okay, now I know what to do. But I can't get there without the crochet. So far, do you recognize that? What kind of distractions and things do you have that are going to be useful? Changing the channel that's going to be useful. Can you think of anything? Oh, Shield, yeah.
Sorry.
Go for
Hi.
it.
I'm trying to connect the things that you're saying. So basically, if an emotion comes up, like, for example, anger or frustration, and instead of maybe our reaction might be to react and retaliate or say something that would be hurtful, are you saying like a good way to change the neurons in our brain to being so reactive is to take a pause, like maybe like if we don't have something immediately we can go to, like we could take some deep breaths, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
And then just separate ourselves from that reaction. But what I want to understand is, are you saying like sit with the anger? So like, something happens and you become reactive and the anger steps in, you take a breath, like 3 deep breaths, but then instead of like pushing away the anger, are you saying that we just like sit with it? Like, how do you sit with it?
Mm. Yeah, so not you don't want to just sit with the anger, because that's called stewing, and we don't want to do that.
Okay.
So no, when we feel that anger and frustration arise, it's to, instead of jump into the blame or the revenge or the resentment, to actually have the courage to sit with it and go, what's happening here? And how we do that isn't by going, they did this thing. You go, how am I feeling? Why am I upset? What's happening in our mind? And you might find, actually, they didn't do anything. I'm just so unhappy. I'm so dissatisfied that any little thing sets me off. So you're not actually sitting with the anger, you're sitting with the sensation, and you're investigating the sensation. Where do you feel the anger? What does your body feel like? Whereabouts in your body do you feel it? What does your emotion feel like? What is it that your anger is telling you? And as Venerable Rabina so often says, anger happens when attachment does not get what it wants. So when we sit with it, what we're doing is we're looking underneath the anger and going, what am I not getting that I want? And so now it's not about them, it's about me. What's happening here? What do I need that I'm not getting? What is it that I need right now? So if in that way, if we create the pause and sit with it, then we'll come up with something other than being reactive. But what'll happen is if you already find that the cycle is up and running, then you've got to go and remove yourself from the situation and do something else because it's
Right.
already too late. So it's like squeezing the toothpaste out of the tube. You can't shove it back in again.
Yes.
Once the toothpaste is out of the tube, then you've just got to remove yourself from the situation so you don't make it any worse.
Got it. So what do you refer to when you say like sit with it and feel with it? Is there a particular emotion you were thinking of when you were mentioning like when it arises, don't go and like watching
Blame. Don't
YouTube.
go into the blame. That's not what you're sitting with. You're not sitting with blame. What you're sitting with is going, what does anger feel like? What's anger saying? It's saying, no.
Yes.
I mean, what is it? What does your anger say? What is it saying? What's the words?
Oh, are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm actually asking you.
Yeah, I think it depends on the situation. When I don't get what I want, then I would get angry, and I am
That's
trying.
it. So stop right there. So go, so here I am. The first that we know that something's wrong is we're angry and we're about to say all of these things that we don't want to. And we're going, oh, hang on a second. Am I that kind of person? That's the
Right.
first that we kind of know, isn't it? That something's gone wrong. So then we've got to wind it back and go, why am I feeling like this? And then normally we go, because you did that.
Right.
But then you go, no, what am I feeling? What am I, like you said, what do I need that I'm not getting?
Hmm.
And then so then it goes quite deep. And so what do you find there? What is it that you need that you're not getting that makes you angry? So what's behind that? What's happening?
Right. And I guess that's something when if it does come up, it's a strategy to use and ask myself, well, what is it that, I'm not getting? And then I suppose once I have that clarity, then I can make better decisions.
Yeah,
Problem
and
solve
you'll
better.
also you'll be more compassionate. You'll be more patient with yourself. So it's not what do I need that I'm not getting, like I need $100 or I need you to shut up. It's the inner need. So I'll give you an example. So here's one. It's not about anger, but as a program coordinator, a spiritual program coordinator at Lungri Tongpa Center, often, we have big tours come through and it's very exciting now that, that the lamas are touring again and how fantastic. But often, like if I hear someone's touring, I'm like, oh no, Geshe Zopa's touring, and I'm like, oh no, I've got to organize it. This part of me goes, how awful is that to think, oh no, like if His Holiness the Dalai Lama came and I'd go, oh no, His Holiness is coming. How awful is that? I don't want to feel like that. So then it's like, um, how do I wind that back? So the oh no response. I'm not going to get all judgmental and go, oh, you're a terrible person, Miffi. It's just a response. It's a response. Why am I having that response? So there's a whole lot of things. Part of it is circumstantial. Oh, overworked, burnt out, not enough people on the team. So then those things you can do something about. And so instead of just panicking or having dread, to start unpicking it and go, well, actually, all of those things, we can get more people on the team. It takes time, it takes a few years, but you just keep doing it. And now we've got some really amazing people, volunteers. How to burn out? Well, you just got to actually just do the big things and slot rest. How to deal with burnout? Slot rest in as something that you're doing for the benefit of others. So then you actually do rest instead of put it off, because you're resting for the benefit of others. Okay, so slot that in. So then why am I still feeling terrible? Why am I still going, oh no? Well, it's actually because inside I have this feeling as if I'm alone and no one's going to help me. So that's an emotional sensation, but it's patently not true. So then you go, oh, okay, so there's probably a whole lot of habit here, momentum from the past of feeling alone and isolated and not recognizing where there's help and not being able to accept help. And so then I can relax about that too and go, oh, no, actually, there's people around me that care and help. Our gurus, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, is going to come. He cares about me too and wants to help. It's actually going to be okay. They're going to help me. It's not me all by myself. That was a mistake. So all of that can only happen if you slow it down. And so from the initial kind of like, no, it's all too much, or leave me alone, then you can relax and then you can feel supported and then embrace the situation. Same thing with anger. Same thing with anger. It separates us out. It makes us feel isolated. So you've got to start creating that space to be able to look in. What's unhappy? Where is it unhappy? What's the story it's telling me?
Thank you. Thank you, Miffi.
So the last little bits of the cycle. So we've got change the channel. Oh, sorry, was there a...
Yeah, just wanted to remind you that you wanted to hand out the reflection sheets or send a link.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll do that at the end of our handy hints. So then we've changed the channel. At least if we're about to fall off the wagon, we haven't done anything to make things worse. And so what happens then is our skills will grow. Our constructive brain circuits will strengthen. All of the associations will strengthen. So what in the beginning was kind of a bit of a stretch, now we're getting mentally and emotionally fit. So even though biologically we're hardwired to always notice threats first and the benefit afterwards, we've got to put some effort into recognizing help, recognizing benefit, recognizing when things are going well. So that's why that gratitude, happiness journal is so important. And so then that becomes a habit. It becomes a habit to recognize the kindness of others. Instead of always feeling put upon, now we're always recognizing the kindness of others. And so then we become positive in a realistic way. And so then the next day, it's easier to set our motivation. It becomes easier with time. Our positive habits become easier with time. So this is called natural flourishing. So what we've got to do is make sure we're doing all of these steps and have a plan ready for all eventualities. So when you're about to lose it, have a plan of what you're going to do instead. Like the crochet. And I think someone said, that's how they gave up smoking was with crochet. That's right. It's something else to do with your hands. That's not your phone. Build in some form of motivation in the morning, even if it's not a formal sitting meditation, but as you open your eyes and before you get out of bed, you pause and then you set a really good altruistic motivation. Just that pause, even if you don't do a mindfulness practice, will grow bigger. We become less reactive. And we'll really see the benefits from that. And natural flourishing, that's what liberation and enlightenment is actually all about. It's not about magically changing ourselves into something else. It's about changing our karma or our habits so that it becomes more likely that all of our positive ones will come up. And then we bring them to fruition. So the handy hints, number one, negative habits, they don't go away by themselves. We have to actually do something about it. And if we leave them alone, they will grow. we'll end up cranky old men and women. So we've got to reverse those habits, but we can do it. And we start becoming familiar with positive ones instead. It's not what you think or feel that matters, but what you do. So in particular, for beginners, this is something for us to remember, that how we think or feel about something will change later. What matters now is what we do, how we respond, whether we're reactive or whether we can pause and do something positive instead. That's what's going to rewire our brain. And then later on, how we think and feel will naturally change. So whether we try and push the horrible feeling away or whether we can sit with it, just recognize the horrible feeling is going to be there for a while, but how we respond to it, that's what matters the most at the moment. And how we can encourage ourselves is to remember pain is unpleasant, but it's important. And you think of pain as a message. It's communicating something to us. And often it's really important. It's what keeps us alive. But we interpret the message wrong because we go, oh, I don't want to hear it. So again, if we create a little bit of pause and space so that we have the courage to hear it. Emotions are emotional signals. So again, we can pay attention to them by remembering they help us. So frustration, it's an emotional signal. What does it signal? Frustration and anger signal that something's going wrong and we're not getting what we want. And then we look in and we go, is that what I really want, or is something deeper? Do I really want that chocolate, or do I really want that person to do this thing? Or is it a deeper thing? And that's this last one. Don't give up what you want most at the moment. Don't give up what you want most, those important things, for what you want now in the moment. So when we're calm, what we want most is happiness for ourselves and others. That's it, isn't it? We want our family to be safe. We want to be able to benefit others. We want to make our life useful. All of those things. We might have our list of Dharma aspirations. I want to do this retreat. I want to do those teachings. I want to be able to visit my long lost relative. And what stops us? All of this reactivity in the moment. And even just what we want now, it's just us being distracted. So we've got to shift the focus. So I will get the link here. So the two links for the homework and so the reflection sheets. Here we are. And the PowerPoints from today, the PowerPoint summary. I've just put them there into the chat. Oops. I've got to do it to everybody. Here we are. Right, there we are. That's to everybody. So copy and paste those or open them up. A little quote from Lama Yeshe to end. No matter what sort of mental problem you experience, instead of getting nervous and fearful, sit back, relax, and be as silent as possible. In this way, you will automatically be able to see reality and understand the root of the problem. When we experience problems, either internal or external, our narrow, unskillful mind only makes them worse. When someone with an itchy skin condition scratches it, he feels some temporary relief and thinks his scratching has made it better, but in fact his scratching has made it worse. We are like that. We do the same thing every day of our lives. So instead of trying to stop problems like this, we should relax and rely on our skillful, silent mind. So it brings us back again to that natural purity of the mind. We've got to be able to pause and let all of that disturbance subside so we can reconnect with that natural purity of our mind, that natural spaciousness and stillness. So our mind is naturally pure like the sky. All those experiences, sensations, thoughts and feelings and stories, a lot of that, it's just toxic and mistaken. And we've got to put in place some machinery to purify it. And that machinery is meditation, with formal or informal, but that looking within. And if we recognize throughout the week those stages of the habit cycle, try and see which one's going on, and then just wind it back one. Just one step. That way we'll be able to slowly deconstruct those negative responses so they don't ever arise again. Not push them down, but actually they're gone. So then next week, we'll dedicate our merits in a moment, but next week we'll look more in the processes of the mind, and not just the negative things that happen in the mind, but what we can put in place instead, what we can practice instead. So not leaving a vacuum, but and not just distracting ourselves, but how to practice some really positive habits that will carry us along. And then happiness will end up being our habit. Shall we dedicate our merits then? Thank you so much, everyone, for coming along. And I really hope to see you next week, same time, same place. And let's dedicate our efforts. So all of the good-heartedness, all of your concentration, all of your hopes and wishes and aspirations, let's dedicate it that we can actually reveal that natural purity of our mind, that we can bring all of our positive characteristics up strong, come to fruition, so we can perfectly help ourselves and others, all the way from here to full liberation and enlightenment. And we can also offer our practice to our most precious gurus, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We can offer our life to these precious gurus that guide us and share their wisdom. And we can make prayers for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche so we can continue the story. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Miffi,
Thank you,
I just want
Miffi.
Night.
to remind you, Miffi, that you're staying after to explain the mandala.
Oh, yep, sure. Yep. I'll just
Thank
go
you.
get a drink of water and I'll be back. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Miffi. That was great. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Sunny.